say just before you come, two announcements. Excuse me.
Program 6.
Thank you very much, Brother Sanders, for that wonderful plug concerning the radio. I don't know whether some of you folk realize the tremendous impact of the radio or not. Some folk thought that with the TV, radio would become a back number. That's not true. We thank God for the Bible Institute Hour that's aired over so many outlets. I trust you'll be remembering that in prayer. This evening, I'd like to think together on the theme of world government. We indicated that this week, before it had concluded, we would be dealing with world government and world religion. Tomorrow evening, world religion. This evening, world government, the two-headed monster of these last days. I want to think with you on this theme of world government, on the general head of what prophetic importance is the European common market. Of what prophetic importance is the European common market. Now, some folk have a way of getting events of the day a little bit mixed up and getting one of the things in one plug that shouldn't belong there, another thing in another plug that shouldn't belong there, like the fellow who got so many electrical gifts for Christmas that he scarcely knew which one to plug in first. And before it was all over, he had the electric blanket and the electric toaster mixed up, and he kept popping out of bed all night. Well, some folk are doing that theologically, prophetically, pathetically, but we want to get these things in their proper perspective and proper balance. Ever since the end of World War II, I'm sure you realize as well as I that there have been two spheres of influence and power forming in the world. The lines are becoming more and more distinct with every passing year. Seems even with every passing week. If President Kennedy gets to the Berlin Wall, say on a Wednesday, Khrushchev has to be there by Friday or Saturday the latest. The lines are becoming pretty well drawn and quite taut. Although the USSR, the Soviets, and their satellite countries keep agitating and gaining certain objectives in the world, as we saw last night, the United States and her allies say they are committed and determined not to yield to the communist threats and aims. Somehow they're going to block it. Somehow this will not attain its ultimate goal and objective. That's what they indicate from time to time. So there is a tension producing impasse in international relations. Now, within recent years, there's come a development on the European scene that could well have tremendous effects in this struggle for power supremacy. It's what's widely known popularly as the European Common Market. Its full name, its official formal name, is the European Economic Community. European Economic Community. So if you hear someone speaking of that, you will know that's precisely what is meant by the European Common Market. Does it have any prophetic significance? Well, living at the end of the church age, as many believe we are, how could anything on a worldwide scale have anything but prophetic significance and prophetic implications? But let's ask the question, let's search out the answer in the Scripture. Does the European Common Market have any prophetic significance? Where does it fit into the prophetic program of the Bible? Well, to answer the question, we better consider several factors. First of all, the progress of events. It's always good to know the symptoms before you begin to diagnose and arrive at a meaning and a significance to those symptoms and those occurrences or events or happenings of the day. What's the progress of events? Well, World War II left Europe devastated, distraught, and disillusioned. My dear friends, if you've never been through the countries of Europe since World War II, You can scarcely imagine what that means. That's just a spoken sentence, and that's all. Because our cities look the same as they have for years. In fact, they're growing. Los Angeles, Chicago, even New York, amazingly enough. Old sections that we thought were there and would remain there for generation after generation. They've been there a long while, but there is a renovation going on right within the midst of New York City itself. I've seen it, new housing projects and new reclamation projects going on in all these areas. But if you go to Europe, in England, Britain, and as you go through the continent, you can see where war did its devastating, desolating, decimating work. So Europe was devastated, distraught, and disillusioned at the end of World War II. The best minds of Europe, and they're some of the most fantastic minds in the world, never discount them, but the best minds of Europe felt there must be a better solution to their problems than a recurring bloodbath every quarter of a century or so. So 1 year after World War II, that's 1946, Sir Winston Churchill spoke a magic phrase. May have been in the mind, may have been in the thinking, may have been even in the imagination of others, but it was the wording, it was the expression, it was the utterance of this amazingly astute world statesman and politician, Sir Winston Churchill. Sir Winston Churchill spoke in 1946 of the United States of Europe. France's Jean Monnet and Belgium's Paul-Henri Spaak, or Spaak as some call him, began to work for unification, these heads of government in France and Belgium. By March 1956, a decade after first the idea was broached by Sir Winston Churchill, in 1956, mark you, we're living in tremendous days, March of 56, notice where, on Rome's Capitoline Hill, 6 European statesmen from what places? France, West Germany, Italy, and the Benelux countries, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Netherlands. France, West Germany, Italy, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. Statesmen from these 6 countries signed historic documents which they themselves indicated were designed to reshape the face of Europe. These men were not representing some tempest in a teapot. These 6 statesmen represented a combined population almost as large as that of our country, the United States of America. They were taking, and they realized they were taking steps to accomplish what Caesar, Napoleon, and Hitler failed to do, namely unify Europe. Well, you just can't put a thing like that on paper. They signed these documents on Capitoline Hill in Rome in 1956. There must be something to implement it. There must be something to put it into force. So they said, we will try out certain pioneer projects, some trial balloons. So the pilot projects were reduction of tariffs and the pooling of their resources of atomic power for peaceful uses. Some countries, believe it or not, in Europe have already lowered their trade barriers from between 14 to 25%. And by December 31st, 1969, and there's some of them that are dead sure they can do it by the end of 1966, but by the end of 1969, all trade barriers, all tariffs are supposed to be gone. I said they signed that document March 1956. To give it more formal declaration and expression, the Treaty of Rome, mark it, the Treaty of Rome was signed on January the 1st, 1958. That began the process moving. My dear friends, does anybody feel tonight that this is limited to economic matters only? Listen, these aren't preachers I'm going to be quoting now, but men who are listened to and read by the millions. None other than Roscoe Drummond of the New York Herald Tribune says, I quote him, "The common market is not a military alliance, it's a political and economic alliance, and it's capable of winning peace in the world." Just about a year ago in Look magazine, an article, "What's the Common Market?" by Morgan, quoting Monet of France. The economic organization, this statement here is fabulous. You'd think he was sitting up nights reading one of the Old Testament prophets that we're going to turn to in a little while. The economic organizations we now have cannot become the political organizations for Europe, but they're bringing the countries to the point where political organizations will be necessary. As I see it, progress in economic integration will be paralleled by gradual progress toward political integration. These goals will be fused, blended, molded, harmonized, made into one. These goals will be fused someday into one. Now watch these statements. First, some kind of European confederation, then possibly a federation, and exactly in the biblical order. Confederation and federation. Keep those two words in your mind. Confederation and federation. In vital speeches of the day of August of last year, discussing European policy, no less than the French foreign minister, to whom President Kennedy has sent his personal representative at the moment, Maurice Couvet de Morville, was speaking in the French National Assembly, and this was what he says: "Little by little, the European Economic Community will become within the Atlantic Alliance an equal partner to the United States of America. Finally, it's going to be able to represent on the European continent, in the face of the Soviet Union, a stable element of balance, and its creation will thus foreshadow the peaceful settlement from the Atlantic to the Ural Mountains, which indeed must one day be defined." I suppose we have a right to listen to the man who is president of the European Common Market, Walter Hallstein. He is speaking, writing actually on the partnership in the making. And listen to his statement. "The structure of the European community is not explained by economic aims alone. It's equally, indeed largely, explained by the fact that the economic integration of Europe is not an end in itself, but a means to the end of political unification. The final aim is political unity, whether through," and then he uses these two magic words again in the opposite order. The first statement by Monet was right, but he has the two words too. "Whether through federation or confederation is a point on which we have so far expressed no view, because discussion of it threatens to divide rather than unite us." Marvelous statement. Making it even more concise and more succinct, he said this: "Make no mistake about it. We are not in business. We are in politics. We are building the United States of Europe." I'm going to repeat that from Walter Hallstein. Make no mistake about it. We are not in business. We are in politics. We are building the United States of Europe. In Los Angeles, we have a newspaper called the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner. In October of 1962, there was an interview that was recorded, that took place between an editor of the L.A. Herald-Examiner and Dr. Heinz Penzlin, a learned man, the economic editor of Germany's largest daily newspaper, Die Welt, the world. He was being asked, Dr. Heinz Penzlin was being asked some questions by one of the editors of the L.A. Herald-Examiner. And to these questions, he answered, this German editor: "I think that the common market leads to political union. You cannot avoid political union when you have economic union. I would say first we will have common foreign policy, then common finance policy, common policy of social insurance, and so on. But coordination is not sufficient. It must be something like unification. Then we may arrive at a common dollar." Always makes me smile when they choose the currency, doesn't it you? We may arrive at not a common mark, but a common dollar. Now, don't go counting those in your pocket now. "Then we may arrive at a common dollar or something like that." Now, what's been Russia's reaction? Well, the Nation, for last August, had an article on the USSR versus the common market. Russia has been much concerned that this economic bloc is going to align itself with the United States. You see, this is stealing the thunder of the whole communist system, because they claim that on the basis of economics, they can weld and mold peoples together. Here, they're being sold right out from under them. Their thunder is being taken away by capitalistic nations getting together, breaking down tariffs, having free trade, and all the rest. It's an amazing thing. They've been furious. It's a marvel Khrushchev has not by this time died of apoplexy, but I can't tell when it'll happen. The speech of Jean Monnet alarmed the Russians. He said everybody's going to see the partnership between the United States and the United Europe can transform the West by its own efforts and can't be changed by any external pressures. Once this is realized, conditions will have been created for a lasting settlement between the Soviet Union and the West. Well, that was the last statement. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. And then the Russian papers began coming out. In Russia, the two main papers are Pravda and Izvestia. One means news and the other means truth, and they themselves have a statement that there is no Pravda in Izvestia and no Izvestia in Pravda. No truth in the news and no news in the truth. Well, on this common market, a weapon of the monopolies, Pravda said through Khrushchev that we will oppose this economic market, this common market of Europe, at every turn. One of their officials of the Russian Central Committee was in Paris speaking with